Professor Black Ops, Cybersecurity for the people. You see it, let's get it. Windows Server 2019 security checks. So we're gonna go over a quick slideshow. What are STIGs? What is zero trust? What is zero knowledge? What is management device and blue team? I always call this the ultimate blue team when you talk about STIGs. So the STIGs, it's a form from DoD. FISMA is the Federal Information Security Management Act. It provides guidance for civilian agencies. The federal IT security pros within DoD must comply with technical testing and hardening framework known as the STIGs, or Security Technical Implementation Guidelines, according to DISA. So these are the actual checks we're going to put on Windows Server 2019. That's one of the most popular OSs out there. So we're going to look at some of the high-level checks. We're not going to go over them because obviously there's a lot of checks when you're talking about locking down OS for DoD. So how many checks is it? Totally, I think it's 304 checks. There's 33 high checks, 257 medium checks, and 14 low checks. High checks are high impact and high risk, right? So usually when we do these from an assessment standpoint, we make sure all of these are closed. Mediums are a little different. Medium says either I can comply with the exact check, I can have a mitigated control, or I can accept that risk. So what does it actually look like in the assessment? Cat 3s are low level, 14 of them. Usually those are cosmetic or just checks that really doesn't have a lot of security weight on your infrastructure. So let's go over a few of these. So this is a high vulnerability ID. You see it at the top, 92991 high. Windows Server 2019 local vitals must use a format that support NTFS attributes. The ability to set access permission and auditing is critical to maintain the security and proper access control of a system. To support this, vitals must be formatted using a file system that supports NTFS. Because you get those actually extra security bits and bytes with the proper access control of that system. Vulnerability number ID 93027 high. The Windows Server 2019 must allow only administrators responsible for the domain controller to have rights to the system. An account that does not have administrative duties must not have administrative rights. Such rights would allow the account to bypass and modify required security restrictions on that machine and make it vulnerable to attack. Right, so there's two things on there, right? You got administrative duties and administrative rights, right? To do that domain controller for that box. So we want to make sure you have least privileges, just the privileges you need to work on that box. Vulnerability ID 93029 high. Windows Server 2019 permissions on an Active Directory data file must allow system and administrator access. Improper access permissions for directory data files could allow unauthorized users to read, modify, and delete the data directories or audit trails. Vulnerability 93033, it's a high. Windows Server 2019 Active Directory group policy objects must have the proper access control permission. Once again, we're always on that least privilege. When the directory server database objects do not have appropriate access control permissions, it may be possible for malicious users to create, read, update, or delete the objects and degrade or destroy the integrity of the data. When the directory server is used for identification, authentication, or authorization functions, a compromise of the database objects could lead to a compromise on all systems relying on that directory service. Vulnerability ID 93051 high. Windows Server 2019 acts as part of an operating system. User right must not be assigned to any group or accounts. Inappropriate granting of a user rights can provide system administrators or other high-level capability accounts with the act as part of the operating system. User's right can assume the identity of any user or gain access to the resources that the user is authorized to access. Any account that with this right can take complete control of your system. So obviously that's a very dangerous capability of rights. So you want to make sure, once again, we have least privileges. So what this actually shows is when you deal with STIGs, they get to give you detailed explanation of why you're actually doing this check. Remember, once again, it was a total of 305. I think we're just gonna go over kind of over 10 of them just to get a feel of what's in there. Vulnerability 9.355.7. High Windows 2019. Create a token object. User right must not be assigned to any group or account. Any appropriate root granting of user's right can provide the system administrator or other high-level capabilities. To create an object token, a user rights allow the process to create a token that could be used to elevate a system to have that system compromised. Windows Server 2019 debug modes. User must only be assigned to the administrator group. Inappropriate granting to user right can provide system administrator or other high-level accounts with the debug program. User right can attach a debugger to any processor to kernel, providing complete access to sensitive and critical operations. So if you can put debug operation on that access or that account or that program, right, you can see all the data flowing within that program, and it's actually going to write it out to a file. So you want to be careful with that. Windows Server 2019 must disable the Windows installer. Always install with elevated privilege option. Standard user accounts must not be granted elevated privileges. Enable Windows installer to elevate privileges when installing an application can allow a malicious person and application to gain control. So when you're installing the program, right, you want to once again make sure it has the right permissions. Because if you give it admin rights while it's installing the program, the person installing the program will actually take it over and they would have admin rights on that program. 2019 server must be maintained at a supported level. System of unsupported service level will not receive security updates for new vulnerabilities, which lead them subject to exploitation. System must be maintained at a service level supported by the vendor with the new security updates. So when a patch comes on, hopefully we need to get it tested, get it development, and sit testing and get those patches out as soon as possible. Right, because when that system come out, it tells the world what's vulnerable and what they're patching. So if that's not patching, the world really knows what's vulnerable on your server. Once again, 20 must use an antivirus. You know, that's self-explanatory. So now we're going to switch over kind of AWS STIG and then what in the AWS architecture. The AWS architecture, you can actually get an AMI, which is actually part of an install load for a virtual machine on AWS. They actually give you a STIG AMI that you can actually use. So they're just talking about it. So the STIG is available with compliance for 2012, 2019. It's available out there. And there's another one out there. This one you can actually buy. Microsoft was actually, which I thought was actually selling a couple customizable ones that are STIG, the base STIG. You see AWS high performance, reliability, cost effective. So they're actually making it work, especially for the AWS VMs. So you can actually buy a VM already STIG'd. So the only thing you would have to do, stuff that's would break your application, you would just actually have to disable that, which I've run this a lot. There's not a lot of things you would actually have to disable concerning the STIGs. So again, what's the zero trust architecture? I'm just going to jump to the second slide. We talked about this a number of times. The guiding principles of a zero trust architecture: verify explicitly, use least privilege access. We were going over a lot of STIGs. The STIG actually focus on using least privilege access on a lot of your users and processes in there. Assume a breach. Right. Minimum blast radius for breaches prevent lateral movement by segmenting accesses by network, user device, and application awareness. Verify all sessions are encrypted end to end. Use analytics to get visibility, drive threat detection, and improve defense. Right. There's so many ransomware and hacks, right? So hopefully we are trying to get the zero trust implemented to slow down some of these hackers and slowing down some of this ransomware. So that's our standard 3-tier architecture, web tier, app tier, database, right? There's no micro-segmentation. If you looked at the last slide, they were talking about segmentation. So segmentation in a Windows 2019 server would be, here's another architecture of it. You see Corporate devices, we got management here. We're looking for the device identity, compliance, if you should use multi-factor authentication. In the back is the 3-tier architecture. You got your data, app, and infrastructure separated with your network. So again, that's actually Microsoft's Zero Trust Overview site. This is Amazon's Zero Trust architecture. Once again, it has the 3-tier architecture with the database at the bottom. As 3-tier CloudFront, API, Lambda, and RDS database. With the database down there, which sits on top of the OS, of course, we want the data in the database to be encrypted at rest. So just some high-level stuff. I actually got a video, and I might link that at the end with me actually going through what a Zero Trust it actually is. So here is if you want to work from, we're going to say from home or corporation, and you want to actually get in there, you will RDP in. We actually got to go into a Linux box, because a lot of times when somebody attack and they know you use an RDP, they assume your jump box is going to be Windows. So we actually switched it over to a Linux box to kind of confuse the attacker. And then we port forward it over to the Windows instance so they can do their RDP and work on it. So that's what we call managing your managed device, which is your corporate device. And how would you get in and work on your Windows VMs in the cloud? How could you lock that down? So that, and once again, that's a Windows PC, Windows 10. So I actually did another video where we were talking about locking down Windows 10. So one of the locks is we're gonna make sure we're using VPN. We're gonna make sure that device, PC, whatever is owned by the agency. That way we can make sure we have the GPO policies on there locked down on that Windows 10 laptop. Once again, I did a video on that Windows 10, all the settings for that. This actually is Amazon EC2 System Manager, how you can work from corporation and work into the Amazon cloud service, how they protect it. That's your AIM policies. We've been talking about least privilege. They're going to make sure you type right there. All this is encryption, actually FIPS 140-2, which means the encryption was approved by the government. You actually go through the NAT gateway. Security groups look, what IPs in there. Is that a corporate device? Is that corporate device owned by our organization to have access to the VPC? Of course, that's our app server running Windows 2019 that we STIG. So this will be a secure way to actually work on your application servers and your OSs in AWS VPC. Here's some of the checks that goes with the 10 domain join. Like we talked about, that's actually going to make sure it's controlled by you. All the patches are in there and all the malware updates. And with Windows 10, you get what they call credential guard using virtualization-based security projects. So the Windows 10 actually has additional security for your passwords. Windows Server micro-segmentation, put it on the host-based firewall. That's going to actually help with your east and west traffic. Once again, this is a high level. We're actually probably going to go live and drill down in more detail. Windows Server whitelist. You can run Bitlocker. It's a whitelisting program built in. It's a deny all and run few. So on your Windows 10 server, and actually on the server, you can say what application is running on that server. If anything else like malware gets on that server and tries to run a different application, if that application is not on your whitelist, it will be blocked, right? So that will help with your east and west traffic and helping with malware getting on your servers too. Part of the Windows Server 2019 is Bitlocker. It's actually encryption at rest. It's actually being approved by the government. So that's all that's stating. Bitlocker drive encryption is a data protection feature that integrates with the OS, right? So once again, that's it. I just want to hit it at a high level. So let me go up to the top. Once again, if you have any questions, just put them in the comment section. We just quickly went over Windows Server 2019. What is this? A STIG? What is Zero Trust? What is a managed device and aka Blue Team? How we're going to lock down these systems. So when somebody says, I've locked down a Windows Server 2019, what does that really mean? To me, the STIGs actually walks to you over 300 checks, something you can verify and figure out what's the status of your posture for your organization. Once again, this is Professor Black Ops hitting the STIGs. Please subscribe. Have a great Friday.